Hey, what's up? Con Man here. Today I'll be showing you the basic principles of pouring a concrete slab, giving you a good general foundation, no pun intended. Start by positioning the concrete truck where when you have the amount of chutes you need on the truck, the chutes land where you can swing the chute to both sides of the slab as much as possible. Make sure you are pouring a 4-inch slump, not too wet of mud, at the appropriate thickness and PSI for the application. 4,000 PSI, 10-inch thick in this case. And that you have good reinforcement and good compacted subgrade. Subgrade is super important, and so is reinforcement. Essentially, fill the hole with mud. Swing the chute back and forth, trying not to pile too high or you'll have to rake it later. But too little, and you won't have enough concrete. If you have more than one truck, you will want to dump them pretty quickly. Pretty much dump it all out. I dumped the second truck while we were screeding. Slowly finish filling in the last bit of concrete you need in the hole because you don't want too much. I have a pin with a nail in a hole where the string lines up when pulled across the pad to each surface, existing or form. We pull what's called a wet screed off of that, where you can go from grade pin or stake to grade pin or stake, or in this case, existing to grade pin. That line we screed in allows us to run screed off that instead of needing form or existing concrete to go off of. You want to rake it as flat as you can without raking too low. Higher is better. Do not rake or walk in the wet screed you created. Screed the concrete in sweeping motion, using your forms, existing, or wet screed line as guidance. Kind of like a big rake. You can also do a seesaw action, but we'll do more in-depth videos later. This pad is essentially screeded as 4 smaller pads, making one big pad. As soon as it's ready, which if you're pouring 4-inch slump, is right away, bull float with pulled magnesium float. The bull float closes up rough surface and tells you where you didn't screed flat. You need to throw mud in your low spots, holes, and pull mud out of your high. Focusing on the middle of the slab, stay a foot away from the edge. We are dealing with over 20 mile per hour sustained winds, actually worse, next to the street where we're at. So we're having to fight with tons of acorns, leaves, and sticks blowing all into the concrete. Also, winds like that, especially winds like this, will dry your concrete out very quickly. So it's important to take all aspects of the weather into consideration when planning your pour. If you are watching this video to pour a pad this size alone, I would not recommend it. Hire a contractor. I wouldn't even recommend most finishers pour this size alone. I am pouring here with a trainee, so in a lot of ways it can be harder than pouring alone. Do not recommend it. I am doing my best to teach, but with these wind conditions and slump, I'm having to stay moving. After you bull float the middle flat and, at first, mostly smooth without overworking it, you want to hand float or magnesium float the edges to be flat and flush with existing or forms. It can be achieved by slow, flat, sweeping half-circle motion. Where it doesn't get smooth is hole or hill, and you'll have to pull or push a nearby hole or hill into another hole or hill, or you have to get some mud from somewhere or take some out if you have nowhere to take it or if it's too much. That's where you can get everything really flat and flush right up to your edge. Then you can use the edger tool, also very mandatory to edge the perimeter of concrete. Edging is mandatory or you will have crappy looking edge that'll chip. You have to edge. Use just the blade to open up the edge first, and then finessively and flatly run the edger back and forth with a bit of a rocking motion where you opened said edge. You should be hand floating the edges as you go, especially where you scrape cream from surface to fix the edge. Have someone do it behind you, or quickly finish and go back to where you started and retrace your footsteps with the float. But usually you'd want to carry a float with you and do it at the same time. You would want to check readiness for joints at this point if you haven't already, and run a butterfly type pull joiner in most situations to open them up. Then we bull float the middle again and clean edges with scraper, shovel, or trowel. When ready, rerun edges and broom. Float it out and broom again, or broom when ready. To broom, you have to decide direction, usually opposite of traffic, and your roughness of finish or lack thereof. You need a broom on exterior so you don't fall when wet, and vehicle traction. Speaking of exterior, environments exposed to freeze thaw cycles. You don't want to steel trowel, slick trowel, or trowel of any kind at all. No wood, just magnesium, bronze, aluminum, or maybe a composite. These other, trowels will seal it off and increase spalling chance, especially with, the salts and plows and everything. Just not a good idea. After you pour, once any bleed water is gone and surface won't get scuffed, you have multiple curing options. Wet cure is the best, but we will just talk about what we did here really for this job, which is spray a wax-based cure used for most anyone doing commercial, especially government, and it works pretty good. It's a white 1800. If doing your own pad, I recommend a moist cure, doing your best to keep it wet for 7 days. I got the trainee floating here, and he's leaving some lines. I mean, when you're training somebody, it does make the job harder, but I think it's worth it in the end, and it feels right to do. That's probably harder on him than me at the end of the day. So I end up going out there and crawling those out, which crawling is where you take knee boards or sliders, even boards if you have to, and you get out there with your knees and feet just on those, and you use your floats, your hand floats, to get everything nice and flat, kind of like you did the edges. You just do that in front of you, and then you move back one step at a time. Sliders is no doubt the fastest if you have those. If you're doing a big pad, that's the way to go. If you're not using like a power trowel. So I mean, that's about it. I guess you guys can just watch till the end of the video. Easy pour, no problem. If you have any questions, comment below. Thanks. Oh, one more thing though. We actually didn't have enough poles to broom all the way across, matching the broom the way that it's already going there. A lot of times you want to match existing. We have 5 poles, but 2 of the poles weren't fitting on our 3 poles. So we just used the 3 poles, and we broomed up to where there's a joint there where we're gonna have to saw cut anyways, or we would have been jointing. And if we would have been jointing, I would have had to crawl the joint and clean it out. But since we're saw cutting, we can stop the broom there, and tomorrow we can sweep the boogers off, saw cut it and everything. And it's gonna look beautiful. I mean, you'll see it in future videos. So I just want to mention that real quick. But everyone, stay safe out there.